Hare Krishna. So today we continue our discussion on the Bhagavad-Gita. We'll be discussing the 7th chapter, 24th text. And the topic we'll be discussing is the ultimate reality personal or impersonal? So quick overview of what we have discussed in the previous sessions. In the last session, we discussed about different gods. Overall, from the 7th chapter, the idea is that we are discussing how God manifests in the world. And now, continuing that thread of discussion, discussing that when we start from the world and then try to conceive God, how we arrive at particular conceptions and how those conceptions may not be the fullest or the most complete conceptions. So this is 724 in the Gita. Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayaha param bhavamajananto mamavyaymanuttamam. So Krishna is speaking here. Avyaktam vyaktim apannam. Avyaktam is unmanifest. Vyaktim apannam is to become manifest. So those who think that I was unmanifest before and now I have become manifest, manyante mam abuddhayaha. Such people are lacking in intelligence. Param bhavamajananto. They do not understand my ultimate transcendental nature. Mamavyayam anuttamam. I am imperishable and I am, avyaya is imperishable, anuttamam is transcendental. Tama is darkness, I am transcendental, I am supreme. So I exist beyond matter and material conceptions. So let's, based on this verse, let's have our discussion today. So I'll be talking about 3 broad points. So first is the inconceivable multi-level nature of the ultimate reality. Second is that within this multi-level conception, where the impersonal conception is right and where it goes wrong. And then we'll look at the transperceptional personal conception, that is Krishna. So the inconceivable multi-level nature of the ultimate reality. So here, when we talk about inconceivability, we can start with even our day-to-day experiences, wherein we notice that actually ordinary objects, as we start studying them deeper and deeper, they become more and more complex. Even in science, material reality, if we look at it deeper and deeper, quantum physics is so complicated. A prominent quantum physicist said that if you think you have understood quantum physics, then you haven't understood it. The universe is not only stranger than what we imagine, it is stranger than what we can imagine. So quantum physics has a chimera of particles which make no sense to our normal way of looking at things. And yet quantum physics in its own way works. The math is remarkably powerful. So the point I'm making here is that things, as we go deeper into them, they become more and more complex. So even if, for that matter, if you consider physical reality itself is complex, although much of it is, at least some of it is perceivable to us by our senses. Then what to speak of ultimate reality, which is not actually perceivable to our senses. So one of the defining attributes of the ultimate reality is said to be that it is achintya. Achintya means inconceivable. So Jiva Goswami is a prominent Vaishnava Acharya from the 16th century, and he writes that the achintyatva, the inconceivability of the absolute truth, means that the supreme is superior to our intelligence by definition. If by our intelligence we could understand the supreme completely, then it would be our intelligence would become supreme. So by definition, the supreme is superior to the intelligence, and that means we cannot comprehend the absolute by intellectual analysis and intellectual conquest. So the ultimate reality has to be approached with humility. Why are we discussing this point in the light of our discussion today? that is the ultimate reality personal or impersonal? No, the understanding the nature of ultimate reality itself is complex, is not easy. So some people say that the ultimate reality is personal, some people say it's impersonal. And this discussion has been going, this discussion and debate has been going on for a millennia now. But so what is right? So here Niels Bohr makes a very interesting statement that the opposite of a correct statement is a false statement. But the opposite of a profound truth may well be another profound truth. So our simple polarity of true and false that applies with respect to, say, ordinary dealings. In math, 3 plus 7 is 10. That's true. 3 plus 7 is 11 is false. So that's in ordinary dealings. But when you go to profound truths, the opposite of a profound truth may not be a falsity, but it may be another profound truth. So God is, the ultimate reality is personal, the ultimate reality is impersonal. Both of these are profound truths. To say that one is right and the other is wrong is a oversimplification to the point of distortion. There is truth, there is reality, and a profound level of reality to both aspects. That's why we approach this controversy with humility. Don't simply say that my understanding is right and yours is wrong. So it might be that if we are personalists, we consider the impersonal understanding wrong, or the impersonalists may consider personal understanding wrong. But rather, what we understand is that our understandings lie at various positions on a spectrum of rightness and wrongness. And we need to carefully and humbly understand things as they are. So the first point I made is that this ultimate reality is multi-level and inconceivable. So now let's look at, now when we say thing is inconceivable, does it mean it can't be understood? Yes, it can't be understood exhaustively, completely. Still, we can get some understanding. So now let's look at where the impersonal understanding is right and where it goes wrong. So first point is that what do we, now at one level, intuitively we have probably read about saints or heard from our elders, people praying to God. And when they pray, they treat God like a person. There have been great saints who have said that they communed with God, they saw God. And many of them have talked of God as a person. So the personal understanding at one level is widespread. But at another level, there is an impersonal understanding. So why might somebody think that the ultimate reality is impersonal? And what could be right or wrong about their understanding? So it's not that their understanding is right or wrong, but there are things about their understanding which are right, and there are things which are not so right. So at the very first level, one reason why people think that the ultimate reality cannot have a form and cannot be a person is that the understanding is that the ultimate reality, which is often referred to as God, is unlimited. And normally when we encounter anyone with form or personhood, then they attempt that they are limited. Say, if somebody has a form, say if I am situated here right now in India near Mumbai, then I am not in America. If say you are in New York, then you are not in New Zealand. So when we have a form, that limits us. And personhood also means there is limitation in the sense that different people have different qualities and some people don't. So everybody has some strengths and some weaknesses. So form also is temporary, limited in the sense that it is limited in time. Even the most attractive looking forms, after some years or some decades, they lose their attractiveness. So if God is unlimited, not limited by space or time, then how could God be a person? So that understanding, that is one reason why people think that God cannot have a form. God must be something which is not personal. Now, yeah, we could say that form limits something, But then we could just turn the argument around, and does formlessness make a thing unlimited? Suppose a person is living in a house, maybe it's a apartment or maybe it's a mansion. Whatever it is finite. It has a form and it is finite. Suppose somebody detonates a powerful bomb and demolishes the whole home. Then what remains? The form will be removed. What we will have just a heap, a debris. Now, is that debris unlimited? No, it is also limited. So just the form causes limitation, but the removal of form does not remove limitation. So what happens over here is, actually, if we say that the unlimited, that the absolute truth, the ultimate reality has to be unlimited, and therefore the ultimate reality should be formless. But formlessness does not automatically equate with unlimitedness. On the other hand, if we use the word formless, implicit in that is the word less. And that means the ultimate reality is less than something, is deficient, is devoid of form. And form is one of the most attractive realities in this world. Whether it is people or whether it is some products, we look at the forms and we are attracted. That's one thing that attracts us quite a bit. So if that is one of the most attractive things in the world and the ultimate reality is the source of the world, then to say that the ultimate reality lacks something which is present in the things which that ultimate reality has sourced is a deficient understanding. So in one sense, saying that God is formless also limits God, because it strips God of one of the most attractive things in the world. Now that's one point. Another point we could say is where the impersonal conception is right is, some people say that, why should God have if God at all has a form, then why should his form be like ours? They call it as anthropomorphism. So anthropo is human, morpha is form. So anthropomorphism is to ascribe a human-like form to the divine. So some people argue that if there were a community of elephants and they were going to worship someone, they would make the biggest elephant as their god. If there were a community of eagles, they might conceive of God as an eagle. So we are humans, and therefore we have conceived of God as a human being. So the very fact that we have attributed a human-like form to God, that indicates that this is a product of our imagination. Yes, the question could be that if we had attributed or ascribed a human-like form to God, then it is a complication. It is a problem. But is that really the reality? That when God is worshipped in a particular way, when the ultimate reality is conceived in a particular form, what is the nature of that form? How do we know for sure that it is a product of our imagination? So this is a valid concern. In that sense, it's right. If it were simply anthropomorphic, then it could be a problem. But the challenge with psychologizing is that it's a double-edged sword. The same thing can be turned around. So there is what we could call as theomorphism. Rather than saying that God's form is anthropomorphic, we could also say that our form is theomorphic. Theomorphic means our form is modeled on God's form, not that his form is modeled on ours. The two are significantly, if not radically, opposite. And now we may say, okay, if there are so many forms, why should our form be modeled on God's form? That is because the present form that we have is the form that can take us closest to God. Among all the forms that are in nature, Here form we refer to species, here we refer to bodily forms. The soul is evolving through various species in material existence, and the soul's consciousness is most evolved in the human form. The soul's consciousness is closest to perceiving and then pursuing the ultimate reality when the soul is in a human form. So the human form is best suited for realizing the divine and for realizing the divine form. So that's why, because the human form is rich with spiritual potential, is pregnant with transcendental inclination. That's why this human form, or the form in nature which is pregnant with such transcendental potential, that form God has arranged to be modeled on his own form. So it's not that we have given God a particular form, but that God has given those souls who are the closest to attaining him a particular form, and that is a form modeled on his. So it's not that God is anthropomorphic, rather God is anthropomorphized, rather our form is theomorphic. Now here we go forward and look at, earlier I talked about, okay, if we say God does have a form, but then wouldn't that limit God? Not necessarily. Just like we discussed earlier, that okay, form causes limitedness, but then formlessness doesn't remove limitedness. So what causes limitation is not form but matter. Matter with or without form is limited. So that is depicted here in the form of a graph, XY axis. So on the Y axis, the negative axis is matter or material, and the positive axis is spiritual. So material form being on the negative axis is by nature limited. Anything made of matter is finite and limited. Finite in time and limited in space. The spiritual form, on the other hand, it may seem limited, but it has the potential to be unlimited. Many of the pastimes of Krishna, who is revealed in the Bhagavad-Gita to be the ultimate reality, in the pastimes of Krishna, he is finite, but suddenly with finite form, he does things which are not possible for any finite form to do. So the most classic example would be Krishna opening his mouth and showing Mother Yashoda the whole universe within his mouth. So this happened when Krishna was a small child and he was doing his pastimes, and his friends alleged that he has eaten mud. And Mother Yashoda said, "Have you eaten?" He said, "No." "But then why are they telling?" "No, they are just they want to make fun of me. They're lying." "Really? Okay, then open your mouth." When he opened his mouth, then she saw not just maybe the tongue and the tooth with various cavities and root canals and dentures or whatever. She saw the whole universe. She saw the sky, the planets, the earth, the oceans, and she saw even Vrindavan and herself within Krishna. Now somebody might say, "Oh, this is just a story, this is just a mythology." No, if we want to understand the conception of God as is revealed in the absolute truth, now we cannot simply impose our own interpretations on scripture. We need to see what scripture is actually saying. So the Bhagavad Puran, the Srimad Bhagavatam, repeatedly declares that Krishna is supreme and then depicts Krishna's pastimes. And in those pastimes, the one such pastime depicts how, although he is in a limited form, but he is not limited by that form. So see, God's unlimitedness is quite extraordinary. See, he is unlimited, but he is not stuck with his unlimitedness. Just like, say, some people are very tall. Now, if they may be so tall that if they have to go through a door, then they have to bend down, otherwise they hit their head. And there are times when being tall is an advantage, but there are times when being tall is a disadvantage. But they are stuck with their tallness. See, God is not like that. God is unlimited, but he is not stuck with his unlimitedness. So for the purpose of his pastimes, for the purpose of reciprocating love with his devotees and having loving exchanges with them, he manifests in a personal form. And that form, it seems limited to us. So, if God manifests in unlimited form, it would be very difficult to have a personal relationship. If we want to have a personal relationship with the sky, say, sky is everywhere. How do we hug the sky? What do we do for the sky? So God is unlimited, but he's not stuck with his unlimitedness. He can manifest in a limited seeming form, but he is not limited by that form. He is unlimited, even while being in a limited form. So how is that possible? Because his form is spiritual. So spirit has that potential to be unlimited, even while seeming limited. So this is where God's nature, when earlier talked about inconceivable, now how can something be having a form and be unlimited? Well, that is something which is not so easy for us to conceive. That's why the first point I mentioned was the inconceivable nature of the ultimate reality. And then, if we move forward, let's look at what is this idea of the spiritual form. So we have, let's look at what scripture teaches here. So sometimes those who are impersonalists may quote that Nirgun Nirakar Brahma, without any qualities, without any form, that's the nature of the Brahma, the ultimate reality. But the ultimate reality has no form. But then the same scripture contains many descriptions of the divine form. There are great devotees and saints who have adored the Lord, glorified the Lord by describing him in vivid verses. And there his form is described, his form is adored and worshipped. So both are present over there. There is the description of the ultimate reality as having no form and the ultimate reality as having form. So if both are there, then what does it mean? So to understand this, we need to understand a scriptural hermeneutical principle called arthapatti. So hermeneutical principle means, hermeneutics is the art of understanding or interpreting text, especially a scriptural text. And there are various strategies by which something which doesn't seem understandable can become understandable. So one such strategy is arthapatti. Say, let's consider one traditional example of arthapatti. Say there is a young man named Devdutt. Devdutt doesn't eat any food throughout the day. That's one statement. Now, other statement is Devdutt's weight is increasing. You say, hey, that doesn't make sense. If somebody is not eating, shouldn't their weight be decreasing? So there are two statements. If we know that both of them are assertions that are assertions and both of them seem true, then how do we reconcile? Either we say one is false and the other is true, but if both are true, then to reconcile them, we have to postulate a third statement which reconciles the two. So what could be the third statement? That the arthapatti, the postulation to resolve contradiction would be Devdutt eats secretly at night. Eats secretly at night. So the idea is throughout the day it doesn't eat, but eats at night. So similarly, scripture does contain one statement: the ultimate reality has no form. Other statements, there are many other statements which say that ultimate reality has form. So what is the arthapatti? The postulation here is that the ultimate reality has no material form but has spiritual form. So the statements about formlessness refer to no material form, and the statements about form refer to a non-material or spiritual form. And so as far as the negative axis is concerned, yes, there's nothing on the negative axis, but there is a lot of reality on the positive axis. So that's why the word we could use here is transpersonal, because often when the word impersonal is used, then it is as if the word says conveys is less than a person. And if simply the word personal is used, it might convey that God is a person just like us. But transpersonal means that he's a transcendental person. So trans is more than a person. That it's not, so he's impersonal doesn't mean he's lacking personality, and personal doesn't simply mean that he is having a personality like ours. The ultimate reality is transpersonal, and that is the holistic understanding that the ultimate reality is both personal and non-personal. Personal in the sense of having on the positive axis, and non-personal or impersonal in the sense that is not a person like us. So let's explore this understanding further. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, there is again Jiva Goswami talks about this in the Sandarbhas, that he gives this as a classic example to understand this transcendental personality of the divine. So the 8th canto talks about, this is 839, this is Gajendra is praying to the ultimate reality. Please come and save me. And while praying, what he refers to the ultimate reality apparently by seemingly first a impersonal idea. Arupaya. Rupa is form. Arupaya is no form. Uru Rupaya. Having Uru is many. Uru Rupa is many forms. So that reality, that ultimate reality, that divine who has no form and who has many forms. Now how is that possible? Namaha. I offer my prostrated obeisances to that person, Ascharya Karmane, whose deeds are astounding. Karmane is karma is actions. Ascharya is astounding. So that ultimate reality is capable of astounding deeds. So this is an example here of where Arthapatti would be required. In the same verse, Arupaya and Ururupaya, both are talked about. No form and many forms. So how is this to be reconciled? That actually the ultimate reality has a form that is non-material. And that there is a non-material form, that is Ascharya Karmane, that is astonishing. So now let's move deeper to the transpersonal conception. So the way we have been discussing is, first, understand the ultimate reality is inconceivable. Then we talked about the rightness and the wrongness within the impersonal conception and concluded with the transpersonal understanding. So now so it's like we are moving closer and closer. Now let's look at the transpersonal conception more with greater proximity. So this is again Bhagavatam 1-11, and it's a classic verse for understanding the absolute truth. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdyate. So here it is said that Vadanti is known or spoken about tattvavidas. Tattvavidas is those who know the tattva is truth. Vidas is those who know. So those who know the truth speak thus about that truth, about that tattva. What is that tattva? Jnanam advayam is non-dual knowledge. It is one reality, and that reality is known as Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdyate. Is known as Brahma, is known as Paramatma, is known as Bhagavan iti shabdyate. Is known in different ways thus. So there's one ultimate reality, and there are different perceptions. So 3 levels of perceptions: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Now let's look at these 3 perceptions, and let's start with a metaphor. Here, if we consider a cake. Now a cake has, pertinent to our discussion, 3 attributes. There's fragrance, there's shape, and there's taste. So just like the ultimate reality has Sat, Chit, and Ananda. The ultimate Sat is eternal. So existence ultimately, there is so much changing reality, but there is some reality underlying it which is unending, which is unchanging, which is eternally existent. That is Sat. And then Chit is that it is cognizant, it is permeated, it is made of consciousness. and then it is blissful, Ananda. So Satchit Ananda, at one level, these are all attributes that we long for. Now we all long to live forever. We all want to know more and more. What is this? What is that? What we want to know may vary based on our particular interests, but we all want to know, and we all want to be happy. So we want to exist, we want to know, and we want to enjoy. So these three innate attributes that we all have, these are present in the full. These are also the inherent attributes of the ultimate reality. That's what the scriptures tell us. So now, with this background, let's look at these three conceptions of the absolute. So if we consider a cake, now say I'm in this room and then next to me is the kitchen. And then I start getting some fragrance. Hey, what is that? So from afar, the first experience of the cake that I have is its fragrance. Then I get intrigued by it, and I go there. So I go out of the room and go to the next room, and then I see from far, hey, that's a cake. So I look at the form. So first I see the fragrance, then from far I can feel the fragrance, then I can go closer, then I sense the form. In this case, sense the shape in this case. Oh, it's a cake. And then I move forward, and then I ask whether I can have a piece, and they say yes, and then I take a piece. When I eat it, then that is the fullest experience of the cake. So the cake itself is one object, but sometimes the cake is perceived in terms of its fragrance, sometimes in terms of its shape, so fragrance and shape, and then sometimes in terms of fragrance, shape, and taste. So even when I am experiencing only the fragrance of the cake remains the same object. It is I am having a partial perception. So similarly, with respect to the ultimate reality, when the ultimate reality is perceived from far, then it is perceived primarily as an eternal existence. So thoughtful people across the world, when they start exploring the spiritual reality, the first understanding they come to is not an understanding that is of the ultimate, which is permeated with personality. It is basically, there is something which exists beyond this temporary existence. So from far, one perceives first thing, the eternal aspect of the absolute. And when the eternal aspect of the absolute is perceived, so now in this case, whether a cake, when a cake has a fragrance, when we perceive the fragrance of the cake, at that time, it's still a cake. But now in the case of the ultimate reality, when only one aspect of the ultimate reality is perceived, say that its eternal aspect is perceived, then it is still the same ultimate reality, but it is referred to by a particular name. There is a term for the absolute truth perceived in terms of eternal existence. And that term is Brahman or Brahma Jyoti. So in this particular analytical framework, Brahma Jyoti or Brahman is the term used to refer to the ultimate reality perceived as eternal. Then if we go closer to the ultimate reality, we start perceiving, hey, there is not just an eternal existence. That eternal existence is also sourcing this existence and is also overseeing this existence. Now, one of the ways in which people perceive the existence of God or deduce or infer the existence of God is by looking at the order and the design in the world. And there has to be some designing principle. So that means that ultimate reality is not just existing, but is conscious of this world and is overseeing this world. So that is like perceiving not just the fragrance of the cake, but also going closer and perceiving its taste. Perceiving its shape. So like that, we perceive that the ultimate reality is not just existence, but there is awareness of this world, and so that the world can be overseen and supervised. So the Bhagavad-Gita, for example, says the ultimate reality is Upadrashta Anumanta, oversees and permits. Now when we go further close up, And then we, just like we go closer to the cake and then we taste the cake. So like that, we go even closer to the ultimate reality. Then we understand that the ultimate reality is not just just like a neutral judge or neutral law enforcer, but the ultimate reality is a person who is sentient, who experiences emotions and joy, who is joyful and who is joy giving. So that is when the ananda aspect is perceived. So so just like we may know the say the chief of police or the chief of army as a person who enforces law and who is very strict and authoritative. But if we come to know about the personal life of that that military head, and they have their family, and there they reciprocate loving relationships, and they have joy. So like that, they release joy therein. So similarly, when we go closer and closer to the ultimate reality, we perceive that the ultimate reality also has ananda aspect, and the ananda comes by prema, by the reciprocation of love. So then this particular aspect of the absolute truth, wherein we understand that the absolute truth performs loving pastimes, that is called as Bhagavan. The aspect when we see the absolute truth as overseeing the world, that aspect is called as Paramatma. So here the point we are making is the Brahman is the impersonal or depersonalized conception of the absolute, where there is just existence eternal. And Bhagavan is the personal understanding, where there is the rich reciprocation of love leading to joy, Ananda. Now Paramatma is more of a neutral understanding. It's at the intersection, intervention point, a transition point between the impersonal and the personal. Why the transition point? Generally, when a person is in office, they don't really exhibit a lot of emotions. They're focused on getting the job done, and okay, this is the rule, this is the program by which the job has to be done, the schedule that has to be met, the target has to be met. So then they do it like that. So when God is in office overseeing the world, the idea of a personal relationship with Him is not prominent. So in that sense, the Paramatma aspect is said to be in midway between the personal and the impersonal. So now this point might seem a little complicated. So I'll try to repeat this. I'll try to clarify this. But if this doesn't become clear, don't worry about it too much. It's not a vital thing to understand. See, on one side here, there's the ultimate reality, and the ultimate reality is referred to by many names. So the ultimate reality can be referred to Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Jagdish, Ishvara. So in a generic sense, all these names refer to the absolute truth. Now, beyond the generic sense, there is a specific or technical sense in which certain names are used for certain attributes of the absolute. So for example, the word Brahman in a generic sense can be used to refer to the ultimate reality. Now, when it is being referred to the ultimate reality, this generic use of the word Brahman, then that is not necessarily referring to one particular aspect of the absolute. This is generic usage. Now there is technical usage. Just like words can have many meanings. Say for example, I may say, what if I ask you what's up, and you say the sky is up. I say what's wrong with you? You know, when I'm using the word what's up, where the up means what's news, what's happening new, and you are using the word up in the sense of what is geographically up. But the word up has two different meanings. So in the context, we need to understand what is the meaning of a particular word. So in a technical sense, when we are looking at the analysis of the absolute truth in its three levels, So then Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan refer to particular aspects of the absolute truth, or the absolute truth realized with its particular aspects. So Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan, all three can be generic reference to the generic names for the absolute truth. And Brahman is Satchitananda, Paramatma is Satchitananda, Bhagwan is also Satchitananda. It's not that Brahman is only Sat. We are talking not about the cake is always the full cake. It is only that a person from a distance perceives only the fragrance. It is not that the cake at that time only has fragrance and no shape or taste. So there is one absolute truth. It's called as Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan, and many other names also. However, because different people perceive the absolute truth differently, so their particular realization of the absolute truth is also given a name. So within the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, there is a nomenclature that is used. And that nomenclature is when somebody has perceived the absolute truth in the impersonal aspect only, just perceiving that there's an eternal existence, then that level of realization is called as Brahman. There are other places in scripture where the word Brahman can be used even to refer to the ultimate reality. In Gajendra's prayers also, he refers to Brahma to refer to Vishnu. In the Madhava Vaishnava tradition, there is a book written, the title of the book is Brahman is Vishnu. So Brahman doesn't necessarily always, when it is used in scripture, refer to the impersonal aspect. Sometimes the word Brahman is a generic referent and it can be used, refer to the personal aspect also. But within the technical analysis that is done to understand the different levels of the absolute, so there is a particular nomenclature that is used. So within this nomenclature, Brahman is the name used for the ultimate reality, which is only perceived as being eternal. Paramatma is the name used for the ultimate reality, which is perceived as eternal and cognizant. And Bhagavan is the term used for the ultimate reality, which is eternal, cognizant and blissful. Having said this, sometimes Krishna may be referred to as Paramatma. Why? Because these names, when they are not used in a technical context, they are generic reference to the absolute truth in its completeness. So now another way to understand this point is that when the ultimate reality is perceived as mere existence, then there are no material potencies and there are no spiritual potencies. What do we mean by material and spiritual potencies? This is again Jiva Goswami's analysis in Sandarbhas, that when there is simply existence and this world is like a temporary illusion and the ultimate reality has nothing to do with this world. So the ultimate reality, because this world is an illusion and when we wake up from a dream, the dream has no reality. So the ultimate reality has nothing to do with this. So when the ultimate reality is perceived simply as existence with no material and potencies or no spiritual potencies, that conception is called as Brahman. Paramatma is the conception of the ultimate reality where it has material potencies. That means it's overseeing the material world. That is the Paramatma conception. And the ultimate reality as having both material and spiritual potencies, that is Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is that yes, there is a Lord who controls this world, oversees this world, but then the Lord also has qualities and attributes which are completely non-material. He has a form, he has a personality which are all spiritual and with which he reciprocates with his devotees in the spiritual world. So here when we say material potencies, potency can include form, it can have include personality, it can include qualities, it can include activities. So Brahman has no material potencies in the sense that there is no material form. Now Bhagavan, does he have a material form? Not exactly a material form, but he has a form that can manifest even in the material world. When Krishna comes, his form is not material, but it manifests in the material world. So, and Krishna can control, and he does control material things. That he is spiritual doesn't mean that he has nothing to do with the material and he can't do anything material. That means he is not entangled or contaminated by the material, but he does control material things. So that is Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan, 3 levels. So now the concluding point here with respect to concept and nomenclature, that Krishna is both the highest manifestation of the absolute truth and he is also the whole absolute truth. That means in this particular diagram that we discussed earlier, so Krishna can refer to the ultimate reality. So for example, when Krishna says to Arjuna that Krishna is standing before Arjuna, and Krishna says to Arjuna that nothing exists beyond me, that natadasti vinayatsyan maya bhutam characharam yachapi sarva bhutanam bijam tadham Arjuna. In 1039 he says nothing would exist without me. So when he's saying this, what does it mean? He's referring to himself as the ultimate reality. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavvyaktamurtina matsthani sarva bhutani nachaham deshvavastataha. That by me all of existence is pervaded. So now when Krishna is saying this, how do we make sense of it? Krishna is present in front of Arjuna on his chariot. So Krishna is at one place. He's at one place. Then how is he pervading everything? So there are times when the word Krishna is used and Krishna is referring to himself. So the word Krishna can refer to the ultimate reality in all the manifestations, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. And sometimes when Krishna says, come to me, that means don't go there. When you come to me, if the ultimate reality is everywhere, then what is the point of Krishna saying, come to me? Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam. Come, surrender to me. What is the point of saying surrender to me and come to me when he is everywhere? Or Krishna says, mameti, that you will attain me. That janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. If you understand my transcendental pastimes in truth, then you will come to me. Now if Krishna is everywhere, what is the meaning of coming to him? Here when Krishna is using mameti, here is referring to not Krishna as the ultimate reality, but Krishna in the feature of Bhagavan. That he, although God exists everywhere, that doesn't mean that he does not exist at a particular place. He, in his Brahman manifestation, he pervades all of existence. As is Bhagavan, he is present at a particular place where by that presence, he reciprocates loving relationships with loving pastimes with his devotees, loving interactions with his devotees. So Krishna refers to both the ultimate reality as well as the topmost manifestation of the ultimate reality, that is the Bhagavan aspect. So again, based on context, we need to understand what in the Bhagavad-Gita also, as well as in other scriptures, when the word Krishna is used or Mam is used, when Krishna is speaking, then what is it referring to? So this is a technical and profound subject, but essentially the concluding point would be that God is both personal and impersonal. He is transpersonal. So I'll summarize, and then we can have a few questions. So today I discussed about the topic of, is the ultimate reality personal or impersonal? And it started by talking about first the inconceivable nature of the ultimate reality. Even matter, when studied deeply, is too complex, as it happens with quantum physics, and what to speak of the transcendental reality which is not perceivable. So it's not that it's not simplistic that ultimate reality is personal or impersonal. The opposite of one profound truth, say God is personal, or another profound truth, God is impersonal. So these are both profound truths, and we need to approach the ultimate reality and any controversy about it with humility. So then we discussed that inconceivable nature. Inconceivable means beyond our intelligence. By definition, our intelligence alone can't conquer or comprehend the absolute fully. Then we discussed about where the impersonal conception is right and where it goes wrong. So we discussed 4 points within that. First is that forms are limited and the ultimate truth is unlimited. That's true, but just formlessness doesn't make anything unlimited. A house can be demolished, but the debris doesn't become unlimited. Rather, if we say something is formless, then it deprives, it is less. So how can if form is very attractive in this world, how can the source of this world not have that which is most attractive in this world? Then we discussed that if even if God has a form, why should it be a human form? Is that anthropomorphism? No, our form is not based on God. Our form is based on God's form, not God's form is based on our form. That's theomorphism. And why is among all forms, why is our form model than God's form? Because our human form is the form within nature that is closest to God, that has the spiritual potential to realize the divine and the divine form. Then doesn't form limit? Then we discussed there about the negative axis and the positive axis. That material, what limits is not form but matter. The spiritual form has the potential to be unlimited. And we discussed about Krishna was on the lap of his mother, and although he was within the universe was within him. And then we discussed about how the impersonalists are right in the sense that there are statements in scripture which say God has no form, but scriptures also say God has a form. So how do we reconcile both? That is by arthapatti, that just like Devadatta does not eat throughout the day, Devadatta's weight is increasing. The arthapatti is that Devadatta eats secretly at night. So the arthapatti is the God has no material form but has spiritual form. So arupaya ururupaya from the Gajendra's pastime. And the last part was more technical about how the three levels of the absolute, using the cake metaphor. So the cake may be perceived only in terms of fragrance. That's like perceiving the ultimate truth only in terms of an eternal existence. So that is the Brahman aspect, ultimate reality perceived without any potencies, pure just mere existence. Then when say the ultimate reality has potencies to control and orchestrate this world, that is the Paramatma conception. Sat and Chit is perceived. And then Sat, Chit and Ananda, ultimate reality has reciprocates love and gains joy through that. That's Ananda aspect. That is the Bhagavan aspect. So within the Gaudiya Vaishnava analysis, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan have technical, these are words, the names for particular conceptions of the absolute. So otherwise, generically, Brahman can also refer to the ultimate reality, and in that sense, Brahman also refers to Vishnu or Krishna. And then lastly, we talk about Krishna. When it's used in the Bhagavad-Gita, sometimes Krishna refers to himself as a transpersonal absolute, and sometimes Krishna refers to himself as the complete material reality. And God ultimately is not just personal in the sense of having limitations like we persons have, and God is not impersonal in the sense of being less than person, but God is transpersonal. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Okay, so how do we understand the manifestation of the Lord as the Devatas? Well, the Devatas are manifestations not in the sense that they are non-different from him, but that rather his, to some extent, some power of his is manifested in them in a significant degree. So it is not said that the Devatas are entirely the same as the divine. They are, so there are various levels of manifestation. So there are, we will talk about this in more technical detail in a future session, but there are the manifestations of Krishna, Vishnu, such as Ram, Narasimha, Varaha, Vamana, who are non-different from the absolute. They're all equally God. They're equally the ultimate reality. But then there is the one supreme being God, and then there are also other manifestations who are at a intermediate level. So we humans also manifest, we are also sparks of God, and we also manifest some potency of God, but the potency that we manifest is very less. what the gods or the devatas manifest is much more than what we do. But what Krishna Vishnu manifest is the fullest. The devatas are manifestations in the sense that some of his potencies are manifest in him. So why do impersonalists, Nirankaris have so many followers? Well, it's not exactly impersonalists who have many followers. It is more that spiritual teachers who do not ask their followers to follow many rules and give people an appearance of spirituality, the feeling that I'm being spiritual, that I'm doing something good, religious, connected with God, that attracts a lot of people. And if you see, most people who even are impersonalists and who have mass following, they all, in their talks, they talk about bhakti. They may say that ultimately the ultimate reality is Nirakar. But if you see their talks, then their talk actually to talk about the ultimate reality is impersonal is very abstract, philosophical, and hardly relishable, because the idea is everything that we talk about is illusion. So the only thing to talk about is that there is nothing to talk about. And that's why, what do they talk about? They talk about the various, they talk about Leela. They say bhakti is a way to Brahman, to Mukti. So that is not a scriptural understanding. That is their own concocted understanding. So they use bhakti as a tools to impersonal mode. And what attracts mass following is their bhakti. Those people who claim that they themselves are God, because everybody is Brahma. So I am Brahma and I am realized Brahma. You are not yet realized Brahma. So you worship me as Brahma. And they have people chanting the names of their particular guru. There are bhajans which are all about their gurus. They talk about the Leela of their gurus, whom they consider to be God. So essentially, it's not possible to talk much about Brahman. And if somebody has mass following, it is not because they are impersonalists that they have mass following. It is because they do talk about bhakti, because bhakti only gives something relishable to discuss. And they have mass following primarily because they do not expect many rules to be followed. And people can have the sense that they are being spiritual without surrendering. See, when we talk about following rules, we can understand rules very much in a personal context. If we want to love someone, relationships are often difficult to sustain because relationships make demands from us. That if we want to love someone, then often we have to do the things that they like to do, and we have to avoid the things, stop doing the things we don't like to do. So now Krishna is not like a person with whimsical or arbitrary likes and dislikes. He likes the things that are good for us, that uplift us, that help us grow spiritually. And he dislikes the things that drag us down spiritually. But then committing to Krishna, surrendering to Krishna involves some serious commitment with rules. And those who talk about bhakti without any rules, they may have some devotional emotion, but their devotion itself is not really very serious or very significantly transformational. So the following is, now also another point is that we cannot gauge the correctness of a conception by the number of followers it has. That way, if we say always throughout history materialistic people were more than spiritual people, then does that mean that materialism is right and spirituality is wrong? No, this world is a place of Maya, of illusion, and it requires some level of intelligence to pursue reality. So many people watch advertisements and buy things based on advertisements. Now, if all the ads were true, then all the products would be flawless. But it's not that simple. So multiple levels of answers. First is the popularity of impersonalists is because of their laxity in rules. And they may be impersonalists at a private or philosophical level, but publicly they do talk about personality and bhakti, because otherwise there's nothing to talk about. And because this world is a place of illusion, even incorrect or incompletely correct ideas can also gain a lot of following, as happens with materialism. Thank you. Okay. Now, in the path of devotion, can one start with the Brahman realization and then gradually go through Paramatma to Bhagavan? In the path of devotion, we start with the Bhagavan conception itself. Because if we are practicing bhakti, then we hear Krishna Lila, we have the Vigraha, the form of deity form of Krishna, where we worship Krishna. So that's now, although we are worshipping Krishna, we may not really appreciate Krishna. Tattvataha, in truth, we may not understand Krishna. So it could be that somebody who is following even an impersonal path and they are worshipping Brahman, or they are pursuing Brahman or realizing Brahman, they may actually be more realized. So somebody might be worshipping Krishna, but they may be infatuated with temporary things and they seek the temporary from Krishna. Somebody on the other hand might be pursuing the Brahman, and they may be very realized about the temporary nature of material things. So so now when we are on our spiritual path, does a devotee first consciously realize the Brahman aspect, then the Paramatma aspect, then the Bhagavan aspect? Well, these aspects are not like three discrete things. It is not that Brahman is here, Paramatma is here, and Bhagavan is here. They are all one reality. And as devotees, it could be that we go through a progressive realization that say we are practicing bhakti, and while practicing bhakti, slowly we start realizing that, hey, there is something eternal beyond the temporary. Maybe we go to some sacred place, and there we see some magnificent temples, and then we just seeing the height of the temples, we start thinking, hey, there's something which is beyond all this, something which is eternal. Now, of course, because it is connected with Krishna, it's not simply a Brahman realization. But if we just appreciate the eternity of something beyond the temporality of the various things in the world, we could say that is in some ways an appreciation of the Brahman realization, an appreciation of the Brahman aspect of the absolute. Then the Paramatma is the ultimate reality with material attributes. That means what? With material potencies rather, not attributes, potencies. So then, say in the course of our life, when we face some difficulties and some terrible things happen, and we are wondering, why is this happening to me? But then we see that even through bad things, something good comes out. And then we understand actually there was a plan, there was a purpose. And then when we see that things were purposefully orchestrated, and even from the bad, good came, and then we see the hand of God over there, then that is in some ways realizing the Paramatma aspect. So when we see God's hand leading us through darkness to light in this world, then that is the Paramatma aspect. And then say when we experience a non-material divine devotional joy independent of our material situation. So we might be in great anxiety materially, we might be very sick and in pain, but then we start glorifying Krishna, we start hearing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, singing about Krishna, and we just experience a non-material joy independent of whatever our material situation is. Even if it is not resolved, we experience a flood of love for Krishna, attraction for Krishna within us. Then that could be said to be an experience of Bhagavan. So now, will these be linear? No, they can all be parallel also. We can be relishing the personal aspect of the absolute, and at the same time also gaining deeper realization of the eternality of that there being an eternal reality beyond. So devotees will not necessarily linearly go through Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan realizations. Devotees already have a Bhagwan conception through the practice or through the study of devotional books, and we realize different aspects of the divine during our spiritual journey. Ultimately, of course, we realize the personal aspect of the absolute. So, do souls in animal bodies also have a spiritual form? If animals also have souls, why the enjoyment they pursue is limited as compared to what the enjoyments humans seek? It is because, firstly, the soul is the same, but the consciousness, how much it is expressed, depends on the body. Just like if there can be a light source, a bulb, but if the bulb is covered by a very thick film, then the light that may come out of light that comes out from it may be very diffused and not very bright. But if the bulb is covered by a very thin film, then the light that comes out is brighter. So the soul goes to an animal body because it has a lot of material conditionings and it has a lot of material desires for material pleasures. And because of that, the spiritual consciousness doesn't manifest much. In the human form, there is because the soul has evolved through various lower species, now the soul has the opportunity for pursuing spirituality. That's why there is a greater manifestation of consciousness. And the greater the manifestation of consciousness, then greater is the variety of ways in which you can pursue pleasure. We can experience pleasure. Just like if we are sleeping, what joy can we experience? Not much. It's just the comfort of a bed. Unless, of course, we are dreaming, which is a different thing. But when we are awake and conscious, then we can experience many more joys. So if somebody is singing a lullaby to put a baby to sleep, no, okay, that might be comforting and putting a baby to sleep, but the beauty and the melody of the lullaby, if it's to be relished, the person has to be awake. So wakefulness and sleep are different levels of consciousness. So when there is greater consciousness, then there is a greater capacity to experience life and also enjoy. So now the soul is always what it is. So the soul doesn't change, its consciousness changes. The soul does it. So form is latent within the soul always, and the soul's spiritual form manifests when the soul goes back to the spiritual world. But right now, whether it is a human body or an animal body, the soul is in this presence of, we could say, in the form of a spark. It's a keshagra sitabhagasya sitadha kalpitasya. An indicative description is given that the soul is 1/10,000 the tip of a hair. That is so that is how the soul is in all bodies, human or non-human. Just the manifestation of the consciousness is different in different bodies. Then can you explain pantheism, panentheism, henotheism? Yeah. So pan means all. Pantheism is the idea that everything is God. So this is the idea that there is no specific God with a particular form, or there's no divinity beyond nature. The universe itself is divine. So now pantheism is different from what we call as impersonalism, because impersonalism does have the idea that God is non-material. So God is the ultimate reality, is distributed across all of existence, but the ultimate reality is spiritual. Pantheism may not have that idea. Pantheism is basically like nature is God or everything is God. So the pantheism could be even materialistic. It doesn't have to be, but just so there could be, for example, there are atheistic scientists who say, for me, the universe is God. The law of gravity is everywhere, and therefore law of gravity is like God for me. Well, that is not exactly the way God is conceived in the religious tradition or the spiritual traditions of the world. So pantheism is that everything is God. Now, what is everything? If somebody is a materialist, then there is nothing beyond matter. Then matter is everything. Then pantheism for them would mean that matter itself is God. But if somebody is spiritualist, then it could be that, like Krishna says, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. That is not a pantheistic statement, but there is that idea that for those who are impersonalists, they will consider that God is the all-pervading reality. So even impersonalists can be pantheists, but not always. Now, panentheism is that God is everything, but God is also his own thing. That means everything manifests God, but God also has his own personal manifestation. So God is nature and God is more. That is the idea of panentheism. And henotheism is the idea that this was a more or less Western interpretation of the Indian tradition. So when the Europeans came to India, those colonialists, they tried to understand what was going on in India. They saw on one side so many multiplicity of gods being worshipped. On the other side, they saw that there are these Upanishadic books which talk about an impersonal reality. So they had the idea that there is the ultimate reality is impersonal, and that ultimate reality can be conceived of in whichever form we want. And so that an impersonal reality is worshipable or accessible and worshipable through various forms. That is called as henotheism. So in this henotheism, the idea is that the form is considered as a transitional tool to attain the formless absolute. In fact, most regarding the earlier question, most impersonalist paths that are popular, they are not openly impersonalist or monistic. Monism is there is only one substance, one ultimate reality. So they are often henotheistic. So they have their idea of worshipping God, and because they are quite, they seem to be quite liberal. You don't have to worship one particular form; you worship any form, and you can worship. The Guru might say that I'm also Brahman, so you can worship my form also. So henotheism is the idea that we can worship God, we can worship the ultimate through any form that we want, because ultimately the ultimate is formless, and the form is just a conceptual, just a transitional conceptual tool. Now, sometimes personalists may also become Brahman worshippers. Why is that? Well, if that happens, that's not because the Brahman conception is higher than or more relishable than the Bhagwan conception. Rather, it is because of sometimes those who are worshipping Bhagwan, they might be judgmental, they might be condescending, they might be holier than thou. So, atheism, for example, is not like a very attractive or fulfilling doctrine. The main reason for atheism is not because atheism is attractive, but because theists are often unattractive, even repulsive. People who encounter sentimentality or fanaticism among theistic followers, they become atheistic. So similarly, somebody who experiences narrow-mindedness, bigotry, or sectarianism, extremism among those who are following the bhakti path or worshipping a personal aspect, then if people encounter such people, then that will repel them. So that's how sometimes people who are following a personal path might go towards impersonalism. Not because the personal conception is less attractive and impersonal more attractive, but because sometimes the personal worshippers, because they are neophyte, they are new, they're immature, they might repel people. Yes, and this relates to the next question about sometimes, although we are personalists, our behavior is impersonal. Yes, that happens because there is this tendency to become self-righteous. So if I think that I know what is right and this is wrong, so sometimes we, as those who are devoted to God, we are meant to manifest the love and compassion of God first, not his wrath or his judgment. Now, yes, there is, God gives wisdom, and based on the wisdom, judgment is to be made. But devotion is primarily about love and compassion, not about judgment and condemnation. So sometimes what happens while practicing bhakti, because bhakti involves surrender, surrender involves following certain rules and regulations, which are important for a serious practice of bhakti and developing a personal relationship with Krishna. But because we do this, we might become quite self-righteous and proud. I am following this, I have the correct understanding, and I have the correct practices. And you have an incorrect understanding, you have an incorrect practice. So there are two aspects to, and on any spiritual path, there is what is called a doxy and praxis. Doxy is with respect to doctrine or beliefs or philosophical understanding. And praxis refers to practices. So when we practice bhakti, we become quite judgmental about that my understanding is right and my practices are right. Your understanding is wrong, your practices are wrong. So our spirituality is meant to make us more empathic. Everybody is so like us. Everybody has conditionings like us. Their conditionings may be different from our conditionings, but everybody is struggling. And we all need to help each other. But sometimes our spirituality, instead of forming a bridge between us and others, say the other person is here, I am here, instead of forming a bridge between us, it forms a barricade between us, a blockage between us. Why? I am high, we place ourselves on top of the barricade, that I am pure, you are impure, I am right, you are wrong. So impersonal tendency comes largely because of judgmentality. Also, it may come because within the path of bhakti, we may have a superficial understanding of bhakti. Bhakti is not just about what we do, but also about how we do. Now, we may want to do lots of services for Krishna. And in wanting to do a lot of things for Krishna, we may neglect people, we neglect the devotees of Krishna, we may trample over them, we may use and then discard them. You did the service, now I don't care for you. So when we think of success in bhakti only in terms of targets and goals and achievements and projects, then what happens is we are doing it for Krishna, but actually what Krishna wants the most is not projects. What Krishna wants is people. Krishna wants us and Krishna wants other devotees. All the projects are meant for, Krishna doesn't want temples in this world. Krishna wants the souls in this world to come to him. Even the most magnificent temple in the world, eventually it is going to, because of the nature of material things in the world being temporary, and that temple is going to be affected by the ravages of time. So anyways, that was the answer to that question, that sometimes because of being too project oriented, we might neglect devotees. And that's how we become impersonal. So how can negation of the absolute truth also be absolute? Well, I didn't say that exactly, that negation of the absolute truth is absolute. What it means is, in the context, what I meant was that there is a personal aspect and the impersonal aspect, and both of them are true. It is not that every negation is itself an absolute truth. Now, that if we say Krishna is all attractive, and somebody says that Krishna is unattractive, that is not the absolute. That is not the correct understanding. It is not that for every positive attribute, its opposite is also absolute and also applies to Krishna. No, Krishna is inclusive of everything, but at the same time he manifests some things. No, so Krishna is beautiful. Now if Krishna includes everything, does that mean Krishna is the opposite of beauty is ugliness? So the negation of beauty will be ugliness. So is Krishna ugly? Well, not exactly. See, Krishna can also manifest a form which is ferocious, like Narasimhadev. That's not exactly ugly, it's scary. But for a devotee, it's not scary. For those who are demoniac, it's scary. So it's not that the negation of the absolute truth is also absolute. It's just that the personal conception and the impersonal conception, it's not that one is right and the other is wrong. Both are right, because the absolute truth is neither personal or impersonal. It's transpersonal. So normally by negation of worldly things, one can get toward transcendence. Move toward, so there's form, the form captivates us. No, this form is not real. Then what is real? So negation in the domain of matter can take us to a transcendence. And in some analytical ways, we could say that the absolute truth is so inclusive that even the opposite attributes are included in it. But that doesn't mean that every negation of the absolute truth is itself an absolute truth. Does Krishna stabilize the faith of sadhakas who are worshipping self-proclaimed, who are worshipping godmen who claim that they are God? Krishna works in mysterious ways, and one aspect of worshipping him is to understand that he's inconceivable. So when we make choices, it's not that every choice that we make is what Krishna wants us to make that choice. But so we might make wrong choices, we might make mistakes, and those mistakes are because of our own desires. So now Krishna is so expert that he can use our mistakes for helping. He can even use our mistakes to take us forward. So with respect to, say, somebody starts to worship, starts coming in contact with a person who is worshipping, who claims to be God. So now it could be that that person is just a spiritual seeker, but maybe because of their family, their culture, their context, that was the path they encountered the first time. So now in this case, what will happen? They may explore it and Krishna will guide them. So now how deep would they explore it? It depends. They may explore that path, but Krishna is there with them, and what is necessary for their spiritual evolution, Krishna will do. Sometimes somebody has to go deep into a particular path to get jolted out of it. Hey, this doesn't make sense at all. But some people, they just explore a little bit and they understand, hey, this doesn't make sense. So each person is different, and each person is on their own level in their spiritual evolution. And whatever is appropriate for them, Krishna does that. So sometimes a person has to, they quickly understand something is wrong. Sometimes they have to go a long way off to understand that something is wrong. But either way, Krishna is always with them and Krishna is guiding them. So in that sense, Krishna is like the ultimate GPS. So GPS, we are going on a particular road and the GPS says turn right. Then if we turn left, GPS doesn't abandon us. GPS will keep still telling, GPS will, okay, now reroute and go from here. But if you keep going left, then still GPS will keep rerouting. Of course, it will take us a long time for us to reach the destination, but GPS will keep rerouting. So Krishna is like that. Krishna does not plan our mistakes, but Krishna's plan includes our mistakes. Krishna doesn't want us to make those mistakes. So it is not that Krishna is giving us faith in something which is not good for us, but sometimes that's what is required for us to grow. So from our perspective, if we know someone who is worshipping some godman who claims to be God, or is worshipping some teacher who is as if they are God, that teacher is God, then we need to see what is the best role that we can play in a mood of service to Krishna. Is it that we can, at that stage, with patience, with gentleness, with logic, challenge their conceptions and help them evolve to a higher conception. Or sometimes it might be that at this stage they're not open to hearing anything else. Then maybe then maybe we just maintain a good rapport with them, try to have a good working relationship with them, and eventually when the right time comes, we can play a role in helping them come to a better understanding. So generally, just like when we enter into a lake, first we put our maybe toe in to see how cold it is. So like that, we need to explore, we need to test the pulse to understand how best we can play our part. So Krishna is playing his part, and Krishna's part may be that he may sometimes give them the necessary conviction to go along that path, or he may give them the understanding by which they can change course. And by testing the pulse, we can move forward and gain a better understanding of how best we can play a part in Krishna's plan. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.